A newborn white baby's iris scan showed information of an elderly black man. But irises, like fingerprints, are unique. The doctor, citing a system error, immediately deleted the data and re-entered the white baby's information. However, there's an unknown secret behind this. Shortly after the baby was discharged, the father received a mysterious call from a clinic. The doctor, citing potential early autism, invited the couple to the hospital for testing. Strangely, the autism test involved showing the baby several sets of images. Faced with these paired photos, the baby always favored one, a red farmhouse. He focused most on a restaurant sign. He stared intently at a white pine-striped dog, his favorite. The doctor was very pleased with the baby's performance. However, when the baby saw a photo of an elderly black woman, he suddenly burst into tears. Seeing this, the doctor quickly ended the bizarre test. Back home, the father felt increasingly uneasy, suspecting they were secretly researching something. The wife also felt puzzled. Although the test images were very similar, there were differences. Yet, the child could clearly focus on one. Later, the wife searched for the restaurant's location based on the sign in the image. To find out what they were really doing, Ian boarded a plane to the restaurant's location. She first found the restaurant from the image. However, nothing seemed unusual there. She asked the staff if there were any places worth visiting nearby. The response was no, unless you're interested in a dairy farm. So, Ian asked for the dairy farm's address. Not wanting to miss any clues, she set out to find the dairy farm. On the way, she was suddenly stopped by a herd of cows crossing the road. A brief conversation with a girl left her shocked. Unexpectedly, the girl's last name was identical to the one shown in her son's iris scan that day. The girl not only said that was her father, but also mentioned that a documentary was recently filmed about their family, focusing on the only black farm. Just as Ian was feeling confused, the spotted dog and the elderly black woman from the image appeared. The woman was the old man's wife. This left Ian so shocked that she didn't know what to say. Just when he expressed the desire to meet the elderly black man, he was told that the man had passed away more than a year ago. With this absurd news, Ian quickly returned home. What they couldn't understand was that the same red devil structure was fundamentally impossible to exist, and their child. Why was their child's red devil identical to the old man's? And why were the test images related to the old man's family? Even more eerie was that the time of the old man's death coincided with the time his wife became pregnant. These coincidences clearly defy logic and scientific explanation. Could reincarnation really exist? Ian believed that the doctor who invited them to participate in the test definitely knew about this, and the so-called documentary was just an excuse to get close to the family. Coincidentally, Ian's friend had access to the global Red Devil database. To verify their suspicions, Ian took out photos of deceased relatives from his collection. After half a day of comparison, nothing unusual was found, until his wife thought of someone who had passed away 7 years ago, Ian's ex-girlfriend, Sophie. She was someone Ian could never let go of. Through comparison, they indeed found an iris scan of her, surprisingly from 3 months ago, and the location was a neighborhood in Delhi, India. Could the concept of reincarnation really exist? Shocked. Memories of those years with Sophie flooded back like a tide. 7 years ago, their first meeting was at a Halloween party, where scientist Ian met the masked Sophie. In an instant, Ian was captivated by her beautiful eyes. Collecting eye information was Ian's professional hobby. With Sophie's consent, he took a photo of her eyes with his camera. Little did he know, those very eyes would change his world. Soon after, the two, burning with passion, rushed to the bathroom. Just as they were about to get intimate, Ian suddenly asked, "When you wake up tomorrow, you won't regret this, will you?" That question instantly killed Sophie's interest. By the time Ian chased after her out the door, Sophie had already gotten into a car and left. The next day, Ian returned to the lab with a heavy heart. He was informed that a new, attractive first-year rotation student named Karen had arrived. In Ian's view, Karen, like other first-year students, was just there to earn credits, but with a sense of responsibility, he still introduced her to his research. As a molecular biology scientist, he was dedicated to studying the evolution of the eye. He tried to disprove the existence of God, and the animals on the wall were all his research subjects. Unexpectedly, Karen's behavior surprised him. He was very professional and efficient, and he believed that instead of studying these evolved animals, it would be better to find a new starting point, which is to find the origin of the eye. This piqued Ian's interest because he was the first among the many interns Ian had mentored who shared his thoughts. In his free time after work, Ian couldn't stop thinking about Sophie, who had escaped from the line. Looking at the mysterious eyes in the camera that captivated her heart, Ian couldn't help but sigh. When you meet someone who fills a void in your heart, you feel empty when they leave. Her colleagues once thought she was mentally ill. They say that what you can't forget will eventually come back. That day, Ian went to the convenience store as usual and bought a pack of cigarettes and a lottery ticket. The price was $1.01, and she had exactly $1.01 left in cash. After leaving, he looked at the light and shadow cast by the passing train and seemed to sense something. Then, he instinctively looked at the lottery ticket and was surprised to find that the issue time was January 1st, 1 o'clock, 1 minute, and 1 second. Even more bizarre, a bus stopped behind him, but no one got off, as if it was there just for him. And so, Ian inexplicably got on the bus. After the bus had traveled for a while, the guide dog behind him suddenly barked a few times, as if reminding him that it was time to get off. Confused, Ian got off the bus again. After getting off, he realized it was bus number 1. However, what shocked her even more was a pair of familiar eyes reflected in the glass. When she turned her head, she found those haunting eyes right in front of her. This could no longer be called a coincidence, it was a miracle. Soon, she found the girl's name, Sophie, through the name on the sign. She also found her photo in the cafe and bead shop she often visited. Afterward, Ian went to that cafe every day, but after waiting for a few days, he still couldn't see Sophie. Unwilling to give up, Ian continued to take the subway near her home every day. However, each time, she returned empty-handed, always looking gloomy. The search that led to nothing was also a kind of gain. It was on this day that she was on the subway glass. She saw an infinity loop symbol, and in the reflection of the glass, she unexpectedly saw the figure she had been longing for. Ian quickly stood up and walked forward. The two exchanged a glance without speaking. Sophie tacitly handed her a strawberry. Mandos then got up and went to the car door, waiting to get off. At this moment, Ian quietly followed. Then, he put headphones on her, not giving up. The music from that night's party had no words. At this moment, their souls were in sync. After getting off the car, Sophie walked ahead carelessly, while Ian followed closely, unwilling to part. Finally moved, Sophie suddenly turned around. At that moment, the hormones between them surged instantly. Perhaps it was destiny. Sophie let down her guard and accepted her fate. Then she and Ian sailed together. They went to a nearby cafe to chat. Ian was very curious about everything about Sophie, but Sophie avoided talking about her background, instead pointing out some strange anecdotes. Since childhood, she had a mysterious connection with the number 11. At 11, she moved to France. Her birthday is also January 1st. Ian was curious why she was willing to be with him that night. However, Sophie's answer was that from the first glance, she felt they had met before, as if they had a connection in a past life. The reason for leaving without saying goodbye was to see if they would meet again. Clearly, this moment confirmed it. Like the number 1, Ian, with his tacit understanding and scientific intellect, did not agree with this outcome. She believed that religion uses the eye as proof of the Creator's existence, thus rejecting the scientific theory of evolution. Now, Ian's political advantage in studying the evolution of the eye is to use clear and thorough facts to end the debate between science and religious belief. Sophie did not refute this, she just wiped the eye of Horus, which represents divine protection, in the ink locust. Although the two had completely different beliefs, they came together across faith. In daily interactions, Ian gradually learned about Sophie's hobbies. She likes eating strawberries, Mando's favorite flower is the dandelion, and her favorite animal is the white peacock. In India, the white peacock symbolizes scattered souls in the world. But Ian believed it was just because the cells lacked pigment that it grew white. Talking to a science-minded guy, there's really no romance to speak of. That night, Ian recalled the day full of coincidences, which was unforgettable for her. But Sophie's explanation was that it must have been a sign from God to Ian. However, Ian did not agree with this explanation. Sophie knew very well that she just didn't want to admit it. Just like the room they were in, representing complete reality. In it, there was a bed, books, tables and chairs, and the logic in Ian's words. These are what you see and acknowledge. However, outside this room, there is also sunlight. Yet you are unwilling to step out of that door to understand it. The difference in views did not affect the development of their relationship. Every day, they were lively in the dormitory. Their roommate seemed like a giant third wheel. To better enjoy their time together, Ian moved directly into Sophie's apartment. As soon as she entered, the painting on the wall caught her attention. Sophie explained that it was the angel of rebirth. Those eyes suddenly appeared when she took the photo. This proved that souls really exist. However, Ian thought Sophie's idea was naive. Such photos could easily be synthesized on a computer. Sophie was about to explain but was silenced by Ian's kiss. They spent a happy and joyful time here. One day, Ian suddenly decided to marry Sophie. Sophie agreed without hesitation. However, when they eagerly went to register their marriage, they were told by the staff that they had to wait 24 hours after submitting the documents. This was a buffer time for both parties to confirm if they really wanted to get married. But they didn't mind. Because, spiritually, they were already a couple. However, as they left the Civil Affairs Bureau, Ian received a call from Karen. She was puzzled why Karen kept calling. It turned out that Karen had discovered the switch for visual evolution. This meant they could create eyes. If the experiment succeeded, they would become the greatest scientists of the century. This discovery excited Ian, and she promised to rush to the lab to check the results, not noticing Sophie, who was left bored and hung up the phone, preparing to head to the lab immediately. Sophie, however, felt a bit neglected and emotional. After all, today was their wedding day. Ian didn't say much and was about to put the wedding ring on her. Sophie thought it would bring bad luck, but Ian, who didn't believe in fate, firmly put it on her. Then, he explained that if they had money, it would be in this life. That must have been when the universe had its Big Bang, and the two met and fell in love in the form of atoms. This touching love talk comes from the unique romance of scientists. Not long after, Sophie followed Ian to the lab and saw a beautiful woman and Ian moving around in front of her. The sharp Sophie felt a twinge of displeasure. Noticing all this, Karen realized she shouldn't stay long, so she quickly found an excuse to leave. Sensing Sophie's mood was off, Ian asked with concern what was wrong. In fact, from the moment Sophie entered the lab, she not only noticed the beautiful Karen but also that earthworms were being used as test subjects. He thought Ian's experimental behavior was torturing these earthworms, but Ian believed it was transforming them, giving them eyes so they could have vision. Sophie thought defying God wasn't a good thing, but Ian stubbornly believed it was all Sophie's imagination. To pause the argument, Ian chose to kiss Sophie again. However, she accidentally knocked over a potion on the shelf, and the liquid splashed into her eyes. She quickly asked Sophie to get the rinsing equipment. But Sophie, being in the lab for the first time, didn't know what rinsing equipment was. Finally, with Ian's reminder, she had to call Karen for help. Fortunately, with Karen's help, Ian's eyes were rinsed in time. Then, Karen thoughtfully helped her cover her eyes with a medicinal solution. Luckily, it wasn't a big problem, and she only needed to keep the covering on for 12 hours. Soon, the two arrived downstairs at the apartment. However, just as they were taking the elevator upstairs, the old elevator suddenly malfunctioned, getting stuck between two floors. Ian suggested Sophie quickly call the building manager. Unexpectedly, she didn't know who the building manager was. Helpless, Ian had to take out his phone and let her check the contacts. Unexpectedly, her phone was out of battery and turned off. The series of troubles made Ian start to complain that Sophie was unreliable. Hearing these words, Sophie felt a bit sad. Then, the sarcastic Dr. Vinegar teased her, asking if she wanted to call Karen for rescue. This remark completely angered Ian. He accused Sophie of always being like a child, living in her own fantasy world. Just then, the elevator cable suddenly snapped, causing the elevator to shake violently. This made the timid Sophie immediately curl up in the corner, trembling. Helpless, Ian quickly tore off the gauze and climbed to the next floor, opening the elevator door. She asked Sophie to go up first, but still shaken, she refused to agree. In the end, Ian decided to climb up first and come back for her later. Sophie first threw out her clothes and backpack, but unexpectedly, these two insignificant items delayed a few seconds, complicating the situation. Just as Sophie was climbing out of the elevator door, the steel wheel suddenly broke. Ian quickly pulled Sophie out. Thinking everything was fine, she tightly embraced her regained lover, only to find Sophie growing very weak in her arms. At some point, the ground was also covered in blood, and Sophie's body was only half left. Realizing something was wrong, Ian began to scream in agony until her voice faded to silence, reaching the peak of her despair. Sophie's life ended just like that. A few days later, Ian followed Sophie's wishes and had her cremated, scattering her ashes in front of the angel of rebirth. At this moment, she, trapped in the cycle of unfortunate life, wished Sophie could return to her side. Afterward, Ian used the convenience of the lab to numb herself with drugs every day. Even her friend's concern was shut out. Meanwhile, the smiles that belonged to her and Sophie seemed to be gradually disappearing from the house. The world became incredibly dark. After a period of depression, one day, her concerned friend Karen suddenly visited. He not only brought food and photoreceptive worms but also told her the experiment had made a major breakthrough. Worms finally developed photoreceptive cells, meaning they now had a world-shocking advantage. But Ian appeared very dejected and lifeless at this time. Seeing it had lost all its fighting spirit, Karen gently embraced it. Ian poured all her wounded feelings into Karen for healing. In the blink of an eye, 7 years passed. Ian achieved the success she wanted and also obtained the key data to overturn beliefs. By this time, Karen had also become Ian's wife. One day, while dining at a restaurant, a suddenly appearing waiter distracted Ian. The scent of his perfume reminded him of Sophie. A friend helped him find out the brand of the perfume. The next day, when Ian went to the pharmacy to buy medicine, Jing unexpectedly saw that brand of perfume. Once home, after settling everything, Ian quietly took out the perfume and sprayed it into the air. Then, she opened Sophie's photo, reliving those vivid memories. She quietly savored the long-lost warmth. Just then, Karen came in. Quick-witted Ian immediately closed the computer, but Karen told her not to stop because she wanted to know what made her husband so excited. When she saw Sophie's photo, her emotions became complicated. For so many years, she had always felt guilty about Sophie. If she hadn't asked Ian to come to the lab that day, maybe Sophie wouldn't have died in the elevator. Then, she wouldn't have become Ian's wife. After hearing this, Ian comforted her, saying that in the elevator that day, she knew in her heart that she couldn't be with the immature Sophie. But that unspoken farewell became a lingering pain in her heart. Not long after, their newborn child triggered the red demon incident again, making Ian start to wonder if reincarnation really exists. However, when she found information about Sophie's red demon incident, this discovery made Ian ponder deeply. Maybe reincarnation does exist in this world. Seeing Ian's unease, the sensitive Karen sensed her torment and pain. But she wasn't upset. Instead, she encouraged Ian to find out if Sophie had been reincarnated. Unexpectedly, she refused because she was avoiding that unresolved memory and didn't want to believe in the existence of a soul. Karen firmly encouraged her to find the girl to complete the red demon test and explore the possibility of reincarnation, even if the chance was 1 in a million. She wasn't doing this for the experiment, because she knew that if Ian couldn't let go of Sophie, she would live with regret forever. Eventually, Ian took Karen's advice and rushed to the girl's location, Delhi, India, overnight. Just as she entered the hotel elevator, a priest walked in. This made the non-religious Ian very uncomfortable. After reaching her floor, she quickly left. The priest hoped fate would bring them together again. But Ian didn't want to have much interaction with her. The next day, Ian went to the community where Sophie's red demon was uploaded and found the person in charge. When she showed the photo of those eyes, the person in charge immediately recognized the child, Salamina, but unfortunately, she hadn't seen Salamina for a long time. After some communication from Ian, the person in charge agreed to help search. However, when they arrived at the registration location based on the information, they were told that Salamina's parents had died a few months ago, and she, now homeless, was nowhere to be found. Trying to find someone in this neighborhood, which houses nearly 1 million people, is like looking for a needle in a haystack. As expected, after several days of searching, the two ended up with nothing. That evening, a frustrated Ian told his wife the news and was ready to give up, but he suddenly noticed an eye-catching billboard in the background of a photo taken during the day. A flash of inspiration hit him, and he instantly had an idea. The next day, he posted a huge reward notice for those eyes on the billboard. In the days that followed, although the phone rang constantly, not a single useful clue came in. Everyone was just after the astronomical reward. That day, the person in charge asked Ian if he was religious. Clearly, Ian was not. He believed that the scriptures passed down thousands of years ago were unchanging, while science evolves with human progress. The person in charge, however, mentioned that a believer once said if science could disprove his faith, he would choose to believe in science. At this point, the person in charge was very curious about what Ian would do if faith disproved his science. This left Ian in deep thought for a long time. In the blink of an eye, several dozen days had passed. With this ineffective search, not only was his patience exhausted, but even his wife's patience was worn out. He thought Ian should accept the outcome and return home. It was at this last moment, on the first day of posting the ad, that Ian unexpectedly found a little girl quietly standing in front of the billboard. Those unique eyes appeared again after 7 years. Ian couldn't wait to take her back to the hotel. When he saw the pastor from last time waiting for the elevator, Ian chose to deliberately avoid him and took the stairs instead. She asked Salamina what she liked to eat. Salamina told her strawberries, and Sophie also liked the taste of strawberries. This made Ian start to feel uneasy. After she finished eating the strawberries, Ian took a picture of the girl's eyes with a camera. By comparing, he found that although the eye color was slightly different, the spot structure was exactly the same as Sophie's. Then she called Karen on video. The crucial red devil test has begun. Then, without hesitation, the girl chose strawberry, Mentos white, peacock, and reborn angel from 3 pictures. However, in the flower test, she did not choose dandelion. Next, there were consecutive wrong choices regarding friends and the accessories she wore. In the final portrait, Salamina firmly chose Sophie. In the end, she got 1 question right, and nervously awaited the test results. Unfortunately, the girl's accuracy was only 4%. Barely above random. This means they cannot prove Salamina is Sophie's reincarnation. This left Ian a bit disappointed. Perhaps things aren't as she imagined. At this moment, Karen asked Ian how she felt. As a scientist, Ian insisted, "I only believe in accurate numbers, not in vague feelings." And so, the test ended. Finally, Ian decided to escort Salamina out of the hotel. However, just as the elevator doors opened, Salamina was startled and threw herself into Ian's arms, shouting, "I don't want to take the elevator." In that instant, Ian suddenly realized something. 7 years ago, Sophie lost her life because of an elevator, and Salamina inexplicably feared elevators. Ian bent down and gazed at the little girl in front of her. At that moment, she seemed to see Sophie's shadow in those familiar eyes. She clearly realized that Salamina was indeed Sophie's reincarnation. Then, when Salamina fell into her embrace, touching her lover's soul once more, tears welled up in Ian's eyes, and the knot in her heart finally unraveled after many years. She then picked up Salamina and went downstairs without hesitation. Through the window, she saw the sunlight Sophie spoke of. This time, she was no longer afraid but chose to calmly push open the door she had always tried to close. At this moment, he got the answer he wanted. Faith and science can coexist harmoniously, and reincarnation truly exists. The homeless Salamina was taken in by the community leader. After this, the application and exploration of the Red Devil were far from over. A mysterious organization is using the Red Devil to find those reincarnated great figures. Perhaps they will once again create value for the world. The Origin of Sorrow is directed by Mike Cahill, starring Michael Pitt and Britt Marling. Released in 2014, This sci-fi film tells us that what science cannot measure is the quantum entanglement of love. Ian spent his life studying the evolution of the eye, trying to use evolution to kill God, but he couldn't explain why Sophie's eyes would reappear from miles away. The matching of those iris data was like a loud slap in the face. Science can explain genetic coincidences, but it cannot define the obsession with reunion. As Sophie said, some people mutate to perceive the soul, and Ian's change was because love made him believe that the seeds of fate were quietly sown in the atomic collisions of the Big Bang. The director uses a life and death situation in an elevator to tear open the theme of the show. Ian, due to scientific rationality, rejects supernatural explanations, yet he personally closes the door to the unknown world that Sophie sees. Years later, when she sees the red demon in India, scientific data suddenly fails. At that moment, she finally understands Sophie's metaphor. Light does not exist for insects, but mutations allow them to see the world. Science is the rational telescope measuring the visible universe, while faith is the emotional microscope peering into the invisible causes and effects. The two are two sides of the same coin. If science explains how we exist, then faith answers why we exist. Just like the ring Sophie wore as a legacy, within its small confines lies the eternal battle between reason and emotion. The most shocking aspect of the film is not the genes of the red demon and the soul, nor Sophie's death and end, but that the red demon continues the mission of love in another form. When Ian chooses to embrace Salamina, at that moment, she finally becomes an adult. Love is a more powerful algorithm than evolution, the seventh gene that transcends life and death. Those seemingly coincidental encounters, the number 11 bus, the eyes behind the Halloween mask, the child, the matching in the red demon database, all prove that humanity's belief in love itself is a form of evolution. We seek soulmates not to combat loneliness, but to prove that in the vast universe, some existences are destined to illuminate each other. The film throws us a deeper proposition. When science reaches its limits, can love become a new observable phenomenon? Perhaps, like the elevator doors at the end of the film, we will eventually pass through the fog of reason. In a parallel universe, we reunite with love. After all, the ultimate romance of the universe isn't about proving whether God exists, but believing that the story of you and me had its prologue written since the Big Bang. Alright, that's all for today's movie. Please like, comment, and share. Looking forward to our next encounter.